Welcome to the Your Business on Purpose podcast, the ultimate resource for women business owners looking to confidently navigate their entrepreneurial journey while upholding their principles. I'm Dawnette Palmore, your host and fellow entrepreneur. Join me as we immerse ourselves in illuminating conversations with accomplished experts spanning various fields across the business spectrum. Together, we'll unearth strategic insights into seizing opportunities and ensuring that your business is equipped with the essential elements aligned with your purpose and values. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Your Business on Purpose podcast. My name is Dawnette Palmore, and I am your host, and I am here with a guest talking about how to add value to your offers without any additional expenses or a ton of your time. But before we dive into this topic, let me introduce my guest. Jensen Savage is a powerful, start all over. This is one thing I like about not being live. Okay. Jensen Savage is a powerhouse in strategic marketing, recognizing her award-winning expertise and a track record of generating a remarkable ROI for service-based businesses. As the founder of Savage Growth Partners, Jensen has led marketing campaigns that have driven tens of millions in revenue for businesses across various industries. Jensen's work has been organically featured in highly accredited media outlets such as Forbes, Yahoo Finance, Wired, and Inc. Known for her hands-on leadership, strategic insight, and dedication to results, Jensen is a sought-after marketing expert who consistently delivers impact. Jensen, welcome to the show, and thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. So tell us a little bit more about you and what you do, because we only got a little tiny blurb.
Yeah, absolutely. So I specialize in helping service-based businesses grow. And so typically I work with service-based businesses, usually between about $250,000 in annual revenue, all the way up to $4 or $5 million. And so when I say service-based businesses, that can really look like any business that specializes in delivering a service versus a product or a software. So it could be lawn care, or it could be finance, or it could be fitness. But yeah, so basically I help businesses kind of within that realm grow.
Awesome. And they certainly need it.
Yes.
Yeah, your service is not something that's tangible to people. So it seems a little bit harder or a little bit more challenging to get people to buy it if you don't have a good story.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Okay, so talking about, obviously how people, they're probably listening, okay, well, how in the world do I add value to my business without actually spending a ton of money or putting a ton of time in it? So can you give us a little more definition on what that might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I talk about this idea, I basically have it down to kind of like a quadrant system. So on your y-axis, you have resources, and on your x-axis, you have value. So basically, that leaves you with 4 quadrants. So you can have something that's high value, high resources, high value, low resources, low value, low resources, and high value, low resources. And so obviously something that is low resources, so very few things that you have to move around on your end and do, whether that's putting employees onto something or spending money or doing a ton of work, that is low resources. So that's obviously better, but it's high value, meaning that it has a lot of perceived value for your clients or customers. And so when I talk about this sort of concept, I like to give a couple of examples within each quadrant, because I think every business has a mix of these things, and you can kind of be on the far end of a quadrant, or kind of just a little bit eking over into one or the other. But I think it's good to kind of give some examples of this, because you can start to look at the different offerings or services that you offer within your business and start to kind of place them within those quadrants, and then see, maybe I should dial this back a little bit, or maybe I should lean a bit more into this, or just come up with ideas to kind of be in that golden quadrant, which is low resources, high value. So kind of looking at some examples, low resources, low value would basically be kind of like a nothing burger. Basically, you're not really doing much to add it to your business, but it also isn't something that your customers or clients really care about. So maybe it's just a little add-on service, or a little guide that doesn't, it's something you just generated on Chat GPT. It's not really valuable. You just wanted something to throw out there to your clients. So that would kind of be an example of low resources but also low value.
So,
High
do you
resource.
mean like almost like a freebie or like an
Yeah.
ebook or something super easy?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I do think that there are opportunities to have really valuable freebies, though, and I'll kind of touch on that when I talk
Okay.
about low resources, high value. But I think the key there is upping that perceived value by actually giving people something that actually is valuable. I think people take for granted sometimes uh, their target audience's intelligence. And so they think, if I package something up pretty and I just give them this little freebie that, like I said, you just generated on Chat GPT, or something that it just really isn't valuable, they kind of don't realize that their audience a lot of the time can feel that.
Yeah.
Um, so that would be something that's kind of low resources, low value. Then we can talk about high resources, low value, which is even worse. So that would be something like if I run a course for marketing agency owners and I add in a whole accounting course add on to it. And maybe I pay an accounting expert to come in and talk about that. Maybe I hire a course expert to format it. And basically, I spend a lot of time and effort and money into adding this on without actually verifying that that's something that my audience, which would be marketing agency owners, actually care about. So maybe nobody consumes the content, or they do and they just don't really get any value out of it or care about it. That would obviously be probably worst case scenario, because then I'm kind of in the hole and I'm not really getting anything out of it on my end, and neither are my customers or clients. So that's what that would look like. And then you could also have, wait, which ones did I touch on?
Um, l- Low value, low resource, and then high value. No, high resource, low value.
Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. So now we can talk about high value and high resource. So this is something that is better for bigger, more established businesses that have more resources to allocate to things that have kind of a longer term payoff. Um, so it's not bad to allocate a lot of resources to something that has a lot of value for your target audience, but it's also important to kind of be cognizant of the fact that if you are allocating a lot of resources to something, sometimes you need to have a quicker payback period, especially if you are a smaller business. And so you really kind of have to think through, what is the relationship between how my customers and clients are going to perceive this value and how much that's going to pay me back, and the resources that I have to allocate to this. So now, last but definitely not least, I'll talk about the golden quadrant, which is low resources, high value. And so this is like the thing that everybody always wants to know about, is how can I actually have high value offerings or services or add-ons while not breaking the bank, or having to hire extra people or spend thousands of hours on something brand new. So going back to your point of freebies, I think that freebies are actually a really good way to have low resources, high value opportunities, given the fact, like I said, that they're actually valuable. And the reason that things like this are great is information products are something that you can create once and you can sell it millions of times, or you can add it on to your service a million times and it doesn't affect how much it costs you to begin with, right? So maybe you spend a couple $100 or a dozen hours or whatever it takes to put together some freebie that's actually really valuable, and you add that onto your services for the next 10 years. So obviously the perceived value for your customers is going to be really high because you've created something that's valuable. But also that's going to pay off in spades for you because you've already created it and you can infinitely replicate it. So information products are a really good one. And so depending on kind of what your business is, you're going to kind of have to think about what would be a good information product that you could kind of throw on there. But maybe it's a business tax structuring guide that gives you really actionable tips when if you're an accountant or things like that. Another thing would be if we're talking about service-based businesses, would be just small ways that you can differentiate yourself to your customers, to your clients. So, an example I like to give of this is let's say you have a cleaning company, and every single time that one of your cleaners goes to one of their jobs, they always leave, a mint or a thank you note. And, they fold the toilet paper up all nice like they do in a hotel, things like that. How expensive is a mint? 2 cents. And how long does it take to write a note? 2 seconds. It's like, but those are the type of things that really up the perceived value
Mm.
without allocating a bunch of extra resources. So that's something that you can really make the experience overall feel so much better because your client's going to come home from you cleaning their house and they're going to be like, oh, that was really nice. I'm really appreciated. They went out of their way for me. This feels like a luxury service, even though it's not like you had to go out of your way super far to make that happen. Um, so that's something that I think is a really great way to differentiate yourself as a service-based business is to kind of think about those low-hanging fruits that you can allocate to your business to kind of drive that perceived value up in your customers or clients' minds.
Yeah, I love that. So it's taking what you already have and just adding it, but as long as it has value, because there's many times I've gotten freebies and you're just like,
Yeah.
I don't, that was a waste of time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a huge part of that too is really kind of understanding your audience. What is it that they actually care about? What is it that they actually value? Because then you'll be able to actually speak to those things. Like I said, if I'm creating an accounting course and I'm trying to push that to marketing agency owners, well, if I really understood my audience, I'd know that they don't care about that. They care about how can they get more clients, how can they keep them longer, how can they make more money, that sort of thing. So I think, to that end, if I can create a freebie that's like, here's how you can increase your retention rate by 20%, and it's a guide that gives you actionable tips, it gives you real life examples, that's something that a marketing agency owner would salivate over, especially getting for free just for working with me. Something like that really kind of ups the ante, and it differentiates me from other people, even if there's thousands of other coaches out there that do the same thing.
Right, right. So, well, let's talk about how do we find out what it is that our audience wants?
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah, yeah. So that's a great question. I think that's the conundrum of a lot of business owners, and I think there's a million different ways. I don't think that there's any one way that you could say, oh yeah, just do this, and tomorrow you're gonna know what your audience wants. I think it like marketing as a whole or like sales as a whole. Anybody that's been involved in marketing or sales understands it's kind of an iterative process of doing something, getting feedback, learning from it, and then moving forward. So to that end, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of figure out what your target market wants. Sometimes it just comes down to common sense, right? Like if I'm thinking about marketing agency owners and I've worked with them, I've owned my own marketing agency, I'm friends with a bunch of them, I would be able to, if I had a shred of common sense, know that they probably don't care about profit and loss statements and figuring out how to set those up in Excel, right? So common sense always comes into play, but also, let's say you run a marketing campaign. Let's say we run a Facebook ad campaign and I'm split testing two different freebies, for example. And one, I'm offering one thing, like here's how to keep clients longer. The other, I'm offering another thing, like here's how to sell your marketing services for more money. And I see that people are more interested in the retention offer. Well, that's a good indicator that maybe I should lean my services and my messaging more into that aspect. So, and that applies really to anything that you do, whether that is marketing, you're putting out a campaign, or maybe you're having a sales call with somebody, and you mention something, and you say, "Oh yeah, we can do blogging for you," and they say, "I don't really care about blogging." And you're like, "Okay, well, we can do paid ads for you," and they're like, "Yeah, that's what I'm really excited about. That's really what I want." And you start to have hundreds of sales calls where you see that trend, and you're like, "Okay, now we can kind of dial in that leaning more into this makes more sense for my business." So all that to say, yeah, I think you'll have feedback kind of on the data front. So you'll be able to see, if I run a marketing campaign that works better just from I'm getting more clicks on this thing, I'm getting more leads from this thing. Well, that's a good indicator. But also you have that kind of common sense and that just experiential feedback that you're getting too, just through sales calls or conversations or relationships that you build.
Yeah, that's perfect. I think, the conversations are huge, right? And I love you said put out a couple of things and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
There's I use Kajabi for my CRM, and they have this A/B testing. So you can do two different, you know, reword things and see which one does better, and then
Mm-hmm.
it'll push it out.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hearing you saying is it's a lot of testing
Oh
and
yeah.
asking.
Oh, 100%. And that's I mean really business in a nutshell is a lot of testing and experimenting, but especially, marketing and dialing in those little pieces of really kind of crystallizing your ideal customer is bringing all those data points and learnings together so you have a really solid understanding. But yeah, I would say, I mean, testing is huge, and that's something I always tell my clients. They'll say, "Well, what do you think would work better, this or this?" I'm like, "Well, I have a hypothesis, but let's test it because ultimately I will always trust data over my own personal opinions."
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the numbers don't lie, as they say.
Exactly.
I love that. And so, wow, what are some, let's go back to high value based, or a high value offering high value versus not. What would that look like? What would a low value add on or offer look like versus a high value?
hmm Yeah. So, kind of going back to what I touched on a little bit earlier, I think something low value would be something that doesn't align with your target audience. So, like I said, something that's just not relevant to what they care about. Um, it's not something that they really hold in high regard. So, let's say if I were selling t shirts, maybe I throw in a free sticker with the t shirt. That's probably not something that people are going to care about too much. But um, if I were selling, well, actually, I don't like this example, so maybe we'll cut this one out. I don't like this example. But I'm just trying to think of examples that I didn't previously get. Uh,
Something that, while you're thinking, something that comes to mind for me that from experience is like someone will say, here's 10 tips on how to market. And
mhm.
it's like, okay, it's like just a title.
Yeah,
There's no meat in it. There's like
exactly.
nothing tangible I can do. Like, I know you want me to buy your service, but I need to know that you know something
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that's a really good example. And that's why I was saying if you're just generating something on like ChatGPT, and let's say I'm advertising to other marketers and I'm saying, here's 10 ways to get new clients. And all that there is to it is, run Facebook ads, run marketing or run email marketing campaigns. Well, somebody that's in marketing already knows those are the ways that you can theoretically get clients. So it'd be a lot more valuable if I actually sat down and maybe I had an actual case study of here's how I got 10 clients for my marketing agency in a week through email marketing campaigns. And then maybe I'll show them here's what I did for targeting, here's what I did for the actual content of the email, here's the times of day that I sent it out, all those things where it's like, okay, now here's something actionable that I didn't already know. Um, So really, I think that comes back to what I was talking about earlier, where it's just understanding your audience and what they'd actually care about, and what they already know, or would just say, this is clearly just something you just added on just for the sake of having an add-on.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally get that. Yeah, it just baffles me when people do things like that.
Uh-huh.
But that's great. So ChatGPT is great for a lot of things, but we got to make sure that we're getting actual, almost like experiences and things that case studies, as you said, in there,
Uh-huh.
with a lot of data that we have,
Yeah.
and actually sharing that, because I think people get afraid to share things because, then they're not going to buy from me. Well, then they're not your client.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of business owners are kind of cagey with specific information too, because they think that people are going to steal all their stuff. So that's another thing. But honestly, I think a lot of the advice you'll give, even if you give specific advice, people won't act on it anyway. So
Right.
a large portion of the time. But and I think also, especially with the rise of AI, people are becoming more and more savvy to those things that are just kind of templatized, clearly just generated. Like you said, they have no meat to them. And so I think the more human and detailed and relevant you can make those things, the better.
Yeah. And you were also saying, know what your audience wants, which we talked about. You needed to go do some research, but also know who your audience is.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So that's a great one. That is a very, very good one. Um, and that's something I think a lot of business owners struggle with, and they can even struggle with it years and millions of dollars into the business too. So I don't think it's something that, early stage business owners have to get down on themselves about, because it's a huge obstacle to overcome. And I think, uh, the reason that it's really difficult for a lot of business owners is you want to be everything to everyone sometimes, especially when you have bigger and bigger clients or bigger and bigger customers coming your way that want to pay you for something that's maybe outside the scope of what you would normally do, or outside of the scope of who you normally work with. But you're like, okay, well, I'll take the money, I'll take the opportunity. Um, and so I would say the biggest way to overcome that is, well, first and foremost, I always fall back on common sense. So think about, who would most benefit from your service, who would be able to afford it, and stick around with you for, an extended period of time. Basically, who's going to be the most profitable for you long term. So just thinking about it kind of on your gut instinct a little bit. But then I would also say, once you start to work with more people, acquire more customers, if you have demographic data or specific information about them, then you can start to really narrow down based on data who your ideal customer actually is. Because you'll be able to bucket people down based on their demographics and say, okay, women aged 40 to 60 whose average income is at least $100,000, they stick around with me for longer, they pay me more money up front, and they're just the best to work with. So it's like, maybe I'm going to tweak my sales and marketing efforts to kind of align more closely with that ideal customer. But it's like, those are things that sometimes you don't learn until later on, when you really have that empirical data that you can actually sit down and sift through.
Yeah. So, like, you can be set out to actually market to someone else, and you're attracting a different person. And then, like you said, okay, well, this is who I'm attracting, so let me tweak it to that.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Our avatar can change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes, like you said, our marketing and our messaging will sometimes do that for us,
Mm-hmm.
depending on who we're attracting into what we're talking about. Because we may have thought, oh, this person needs all this. And it's like, actually, they don't. It's this person that does.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think a huge part of your success with business is going to rely on your ability to make those decisions and to pivot. That's something that I strongly believe in, is being able to kind of just always be light on your feet. And if you get a piece of information that kind of changes the way that you originally think, it's like, great, use that to hit the next level. Instead of just saying, oh, well, I made this to target these people. A lot of my entrepreneurial friends, my friends that own businesses, or just other businesses that I've worked with, the business that they started out with and maybe their idea of their offer or the idea of who they wanted to target has morphed and changed so much over the years as they have more of those learnings. So I think it's so important to just be willing to kind of take those changes as they come and roll with the punches.
Yeah, that's definitely, I like to call it a plot twist, right? When you need to change. But when we don't do those things, we've seen so many companies that didn't pivot, that didn't change, and they close. And we're
Yeah.
talking about huge companies. I mean,
Yeah.
Sears, okay, Toys R Us, which I am devastated that Toys R Us closed because I can't take my grandson there. But if they only had pivoted, right? If they only had went with what the market was wanting, what would it be today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that that's a great point. Blockbuster is another one that comes to mind. I mean, they had an opportunity to pivot and remain on top, but they didn't. And ultimately the market's always going to tell you what it wants.
Mhm.
And also, if there's a lot of great examples of businesses that have pivoted greatly over the years, and that's how they've remained relevant, even though there's been these massive changes to what people want. I mean, look at Meta, for example. The whole Meta suite, so Facebook, Instagram. If you look at their user interface and the way that they advertised in 2010 versus today, it's so different. But that's because they have all this data and all these learnings, and they're so in tune with the market and changes that they're implementing those things and kind of rolling with the punches to become a larger business. I think obviously if Facebook had just put Facebook up, kept it the same, we probably wouldn't even know about Facebook right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Okay. So people are saying, okay, I need help. I need to bring more clients in because all the businesses want more clients. I mean, that's just the way the ball rolls, right? If we don't have clients, we don't make money. Um, how can they get a hold of you?
So they can get a hold of me. The best way is to schedule a consultation through my website at savagegrowthpartners.com, or you can always search up my name on LinkedIn and connect with me there. My name is Jensen Savage, so just search there and reach out to me there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was a great conversation. I learned a ton, and I'm sure that the audience did as well. So thank you for your time. And thank you guys for your time for being here. And remember, conducting business on purpose not only fuels your success, but it also propels you towards a purposeful life. So until next time, embrace your journey of intentional business and purposeful living. This podcast is dedicated to you and all the incredible women out there breaking chains, pushing through, and striving to make it all work. Your support truly means the world to me. Could you do me a favor? Be a gem and leave a review. It will help us reach even more women, making a bigger impact. Your feedback is invaluable, and I would genuinely appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, ensuring you never miss an episode. Until next week, live a purposeful life in both your business and your finances.